Here we have no lasting city. Here, even if you build a stronghold in a mountain, you're building a stronghold that may very well be demolished and taken into the heart of the sea. And it's not just with regard to topographical strongholds. We can probably extrapolate the point here of the psalmist and say all of those refuges and strongholds on which we depend, the structures of this world, whether it's your house or your portfolio or your relationships or the job that you have, all the things that give you safety and security, all things for which we can be grateful to God, are not necessarily destined to last. There's no promise that here we will have a lasting home, that here we shall forever build our home in safety. The picture of verses 2 and 3 seems to be one of uncreation, if we can think of it this way. At creation, God separated the waters from the dry land, thereby giving man a place to build a home for himself. You've noticed about man, as I have, that we are land animals. Rational ones, I grant, and a time on a boat is nice, but water is not really a place to build human life. You can't build a house on the water. I know there are ships and houseboats, but most of us need dry land. And also, where are you going to grow your garden on the water? And also, baseball, more conveniently played on dry land. Human life is best lived out on dry land. And God, making a home for man in the earth, separates the water from the dry land in Genesis 1 so that man would have somewhere to build a home, to live, to thrive, and to flourish in this world. Psalm 104, verses 5 through 9, describes it this way. You who laid the foundations of the earth so that it should not be moved forever, who covered it with the deep as with a garment, the waters stood above the mountains. At your rebuke they fled. At the voice of your thunder they hastened away. They went up over the mountains. They went down into the valleys to the place where you had founded them. You have set a boundary that they may not pass over, that they may not return to cover the earth. This is God giving man safety by removing the waters. And our verses describe an undoing, an unmaking, an uncreation. If you think, well, this will never happen, it has happened. It has happened. In the time of Noah, waters came and it took away not just the mountains, but all the dry land upon which man had built his home, that all safety and refuge was destroyed and taken away from the world at that time. In Scripture, the sea is often seen as a threat to man's life. In fact, in John's apocalypse in Revelation 21 verse 1, when John describes the new heavens and the new earth, one feature he remarks on is that there is no longer any sea. Now, some of you love the ocean, and you love the fact that 79% of the surface area of our planet is covered in water. And then you read Revelation 21:1, and John says, in the new heavens and the new earth, there is no longer any sea. Now, I don't think the point is that there will be no bodies of water in the new heavens and the new earth, but the sea is an emblem of threatening and destabilization to man. In Scripture, the sea is actually what takes away life. The sea is dangerous. The sea is where you go to risk your life. The sea is what takes away our safety and our habitation. I think the point in Revelation 21:1 is that in the new heavens and the new earth, there will be nothing there to threaten or jeopardize our stability. I think that's the point about saying there'll be no more sea. The truth is this, that God has never promised us an eternal home and a habitation in this world. Here we may have, for a short while, by God's provision, a place to lay our head and build a home and leave a legacy to our offspring if He so deems. But we have no promise that here is our lasting city. In fact, we have every assurance to believe that our hope is in the world to come. Who would not fear in the face of such unmaking, a complete undoing of the world, making the world no longer habitable for man? Who would not fear? And yet the psalmist prefaces all of this in verse 2, therefore we will not fear, even if what? Even if it is all undone. Even if our safety and our habitation in this world is removed from us, all of it comes crashing down in one great moment of unmaking. We will not fear. Why not? Now go back to verse 1, because God is our refuge, our strength, our very present help in trouble. And as far as the sea goes, just consider a couple things about God relative to the sea. The sea may put you in danger, but watch this. But in one respect, God puts the sea in danger. We read this already in Psalm 105. At his rebuke, the waters fled. When God says, go waters, the waters run. When I say stop waters, they keep coming. We put up our levees, and they may work for a while until they don't. Job chapter 9, verse 8, describes the Lord this way. Job says, he alone spreads out the heavens, listen to this, and treads on the waves of the sea. God is the one who tramples down waves. Waves trample down man, but God tramples down waves. A little later in the book of Job, Job 38, we read in Job 38, verses 8 through 11, or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, when I fixed my limit for it and set bars and doors, when I said, this far you may come and no farther, and here your proud waves must stop. God tramples down waves. God rebukes waves. God is the God of the heavens, the sea, and the dry land. Take refuge in the one to whom even waves fear and flee. I think there's something also going on in this respect in Matthew's gospel when he records Jesus walking on the waves in Matthew chapter 14. If you look at this for a moment with me, verses 25 and following. This is the scene where the disciples are out on the boat and Jesus comes walking upon the waves, and I'll pick it up in verse 24, Matthew 14. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, and listen to this, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. So you get the idea of a tumultuous sea. They're out there at risk to their own lives, that the waters are tossing them about, and in the middle of an upheaval on the seas, this is what they see. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. I want you to hear the echo of Job 9:8. Job 9:8 says, he's the one who tramples down the waves. And here, waves are tossing and threatening, and Jesus comes trampling down the waves. Jesus is the wave trampler. Job says God, the one who stretched out the heavens, is the one who tramples on the waves. And here comes Jesus trampling on the waves. Verse 26, and when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a ghost, and they cried out in fear. In the face of the wave trampler, they tremble. They're in awe. I think, by the way, Jesus walking on the waves is not just a sort of magic trick to prove that he has miraculous powers and might be something more than natural. That's how sometimes it's treated, as if Jesus tramples upon the waves just to kind of show off a little bit. But I think by trampling on the waves, he's identifying himself as the God of all creation. That's exactly how Job identifies the Creator, as wave trampler. He goes on, but immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, be of good cheer. It is I, do not be afraid. Just think of how this syncs up with Psalm 46:1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear. Jesus says, it is I, the wave trampler, do not be afraid. Corresponds to this. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you, listen to this, on the water. The water, this is not a placid sea. We've already been told in verse 24 that that there's a great storm raging on this sea. So this is not a placid lake we're talking about. This is a tumultuous sea that he's walking on. And he says, Lord, if it's you, then if you trample down the waves, make me to trample them down too. I think this is the idea. If God, as it were, overcomes the storm, then Lord, let me overcome the storm and come to you upon the water. And he said to him, verse 29, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. I think this is the point. The reason I don't fear waves is because I trust the one who tramples down the waves, and he can make me to trample down the waves as well. In other words, the waves do nothing to me if I'm safe in the one who tramples down waves. Verse 30, though, When Peter saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink, crying out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O you of little faith, why do you doubt?" And they got into the boat, and the wind ceased. Now listen to the response of the disciples. Then those who were in the boat came and worshiped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Again, because I think in the Old Testament, the one who tramples down waves, even tumultuous waves, the one who rebukes seas and wind, Jesus does this. He rebukes waters. He tramples down waters. That's what the God of creation does. If you're trusting him, then what can the waters do to you? Even though the earth be removed and slip into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains shake with its swelling pride, Selah.